Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. In the immortal words of Ned Stark, winter is coming, and with it will be death and misery. The NHS is already falling apart at the seams, the waiting lists are beyond a joke, A&E, you're not getting seen in 4 hours at all if you're, unless you're exceedingly lucky, and it's only going to get worse. The entire system needs to be rebooted. It is not fit for purpose, and it will lead to an increased number of deaths that were entirely preventable if only someone had put the money into the system instead of producing pretty brochures. Well, we're going to look at this article. It's one I highlighted yesterday. I said I was going to be coming to this morning, and so here it is. And it's basically that with the surge of winter deaths coming shortly, it's going to be absolutely appalling in the NHS. And it's something that could have been prevented, or at least, offset to a great degree, shall we say. Anyway, we'll take a look at this, see what's going on. Here goes. Now, we know that the whole system is getting bad. It's been getting bad for some time, but for the last few years, the SNP have been able to sort of sweep the excess deaths under the carpet using the guise of COVID. But they don't have that this time. And so these deaths will be there, and it will be laid bare how awful the system is, how massively underfunded it is. We've talked before about you could put a doctor and 3 nurses on 2 shifts in each of the 100 hospitals or so in Scotland for a total cost of about £30 million a year. Or, translated, less than 4 months' worth of the fees they pay to spin doctors. After all, I think we all agree we'd rather have real doctors than spin doctors. So it is a fixable problem. All it means is that they have to stop wanking money away on independence, which is never going to happen, and start spending it where people need it. Health, social care and education. But we'll take a look at this. And if you are getting on a bit, or you have relatives that may be becoming ill, it's going to make frightening reading. Winter deaths surge under the SNP to a 30-year high as stats highlight their sick system. Some deaths have been linked to an ageing population, while others are down to heart conditions, respiratory diseases and influenza. All sorts of things that can be, relatively speaking, treated. Old age, obviously not, but there are other cares. And of course, when you get old and doddery, if you fall, break a hip, I mean, that often is a death sentence to an old person, particularly women. Because of the brittleness of the bones with the osteoporosis and that. Anyway, the highest number of winter deaths in 30 years have been recorded in Scotland, while an ageing populated is attributed to some of the rise. It's also been attributed as a symptom of a sick system under the SNP. A total of 24,427 deaths were registered in Scotland between December 22 and March 23. According to statistics published by the National Records of Scotland on Tuesday. And if you think it's going to get better, think again. There's been a seasonal increase of 4,137 deaths in winter from December to March compared with the non-winter periods. This increase is considerably larger than the previous winter. And it is lower than the winters of 2017 and 2018 and 2020-2021 when there was COVID. But then they were trying to ship people out of hospital a lot quicker, weren't they? Get them in the care homes, so they become care home deaths, not hospital deaths. Scottish Conservative Shadow Health Secretary Dr Sandesh Gillane, MSP, told the Scottish Express, the tragedies are symptomatic of just how sick the system has become under the SNP. All too often, suffering patients are paying the price for the SNP's shambolic mismanagement of our health. Yeah, like I say, they'd rather have a shiny brochure than put a doctor onto a ward. That's far more important to them, isn't it? People are just fodder for their campaign of hate and division, that's all. The cause of death with the largest seasonal increase was dementia and Alzheimer's disease, accounting for 640 additional deaths. There were 310 additional deaths as a result of COVID-19 during this time, and notably since 2019, fewer than 10 deaths were directly due to cold weather, for example, hypothermia, which is good news. I remember when I was young and growing up, when hypothermia was a big killer because old people would basically either sit there and choose to, put one bar on the fire or have a tin of cold beans or something. Thankfully, that tends to be less of a problem now. Other increases were seen in coronary ischemic heart disease, where 490 deaths were recorded, chronic lower respiratory disease, 400 deaths, influenza, 340, and other circulatory system deaths accounting for 270. Dr. Gillane added that the rise is truly awful, and my heart goes out to all of those who've lost loved ones. He attributed some of the deaths to mismanagement of the NHS that will only come under more strain in the coming months when freezing temperatures add yet more pressure to health services. So last year, December to March, worst one in 30 years. This year, with even more cuts, with no rise in comparison with inflation, how much better do you think it's going to get? Or how much worse do you think it's going to get? I think we're going to go with worse. You've got 50-50. Is it going to be better or is it going to be worse? It's going to be way, 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 way worse. They were given more money, but it wasn't in keeping with inflation. They've had to increase the money they pay to nurses and doctors and nurses, across the whole thing. All the cost of all the supplies, and not even just the medical supplies, all the other things that are needed to run a hospital, cleaning products, all the stationery, things like that. Everything's gone up, except budgets. Yes, they'll go, oh, look, we've put extra millions in. Yeah, but not to the same rate as inflation. They lie. Oh, we put an extra 20 million in. Yes, but you should have put an extra 80 million in. And that's the difference. Anyway, overstretched frontline staff are operating under intolerable strain due to the dire workforce planning of successive SNP health secretaries. Well, you've actually got, at the state it is now, and this is how bad it is, Michael Matheson is actually doing a worse job than Humza Yousaf in terms of delivering what's needed. And yet Humza Yousaf was so bad that everyone still thinks he was the worst. But of course he was the worst because he was the worst everything else as well. Michael Matheson has only failed at health, whereas Humza's failed at everything. Anyway, Daniel Burns, head of vital event statistics at the National Records of Scotland, explained the data. He said today's figures show that deaths in winter are at their highest level since 1989-1990. The longer-term downward trend shows a recent increase in winter deaths, which may be partly driven by Scotland's ageing population. Winter months generally see more deaths than other times of the year. However, the seasonal increase in winter mortality fluctuates year on year. Older age groups, he says, are consistently the most affected by increased mortality in winter. For people aged 85 and over, there were 29% more deaths compared with 12% of the under 65 population. It seems that the very old are basically dropping dead like flies because there is literally no care. And of course, a lot of the care for the very old, the 85 plus or whatever, a lot of that is actually social care. It's people, it's nurses going into homes, district nursing, that sort of thing, outpatienting. And of course, with everything that's happening, it's getting increasingly hard for that to happen. The number of nurses, district nurses, being cut. And in places where an elderly person may have an old car, for example, and they have to drive across Glasgow, say, to go and get their outpatients department, but they can't afford the £12.50 or the £20 or whatever it is to go into the low emission zone, they're not going to go, and then they'll die. So that low emission zone is also actually contributing to the deaths of people. And I'm going to go and beat my dog. I'm never going to beat my dog, of course. Somebody may have chosen to walk past the front door. How dare they? Anyway, thank you very much. I'm going to come up here and we'll round off the video. Now, of course, Sandesh Gillane actually is a doctor. He's at the pointy end of the NHS. He sees what things are like. He knows where the problems are. He probably has, if asked, some solutions to these problems. But ultimately, the big solution is money. Hiring people to actually do the hard jobs. And if you can get the people in and do them, it will ease the system. One of the biggest problems, of course, is when you have a stressed system, the people in it get stressed. It means that they get ill, they have to go off. That makes it even harder for the ones that remain, and it becomes this vicious circle. If you have sufficient staffing levels, then there is easement within the whole system. Nobody is overly stressed, nobody is overly worked. and your waiting times are reduced. And reducing waiting times alone, provably, saves lives. Things often get worse when you're waiting. At least if you can get in and get some treatment done, you're going to absolutely save lives. But this is what happens. This is the lack of joined up thinking. And as I pointed out, someone who may have problems getting across a city because of congestion zones or, ULEZ and things like that, they just won't. They miss a doctor's appointment. Next thing, they're found carked out, dead on the floor, whatever's wrong with them. Because they missed a doctor's appointment, because they couldn't afford to go through that zone, and so forth. It's bad, isn't it? But that's the SNP for you. People don't matter to them. There's only one thing. They obsess over one thing. And it isn't the safety or healthcare of the people. Anyway, I shall stop there. Thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been enlightening. And if it has, do please hit the subscribe button, ring the bell, leave a like, leave a comment, and please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well, and if you can, stay out of hospital. Bye.